I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. All right, we have a pretty full agenda and some really interesting topics that we're going to discuss. I am going to turn it over to Mr. Meinke for awards, recognitions, and celebrations.
Before we start the agenda, Madam
Yes.
President, can I add something on there?
Do you want to do that during the consent agenda?
It's up to you guys. I don't know, like usually at the beginning isn't that proper protocol or no?
We usually address that during
Okay,
the consent
fine.
if you'd like.
Okay, no worries.
Unless you'd like to do it otherwise.
Nope, we're good.
Okay,
I'll
we'll
wait till
make
you-
sure to
yep.
address it.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Elms Elementary School teacher Jeremy Love received the Excellence in Education Award presented by the Michigan Lottery for 2018-19. It's a great honor. Jeremy received a cash prize of $1,500 and a $500 grant for his classroom, and an entry to win the Michigan Lottery's Educator of the Year Award for $10,000. So he was nominated by Carrie Gopel because of his dedication to his students and their overall growth and personal situations. And I think that everybody that has had Mr. Love can concur that he does an excellent job out at Elms Road with his students, and we're very fortunate to have him. Also important to celebrate Deke Elementary School's Mike Sheik, who received the Everyday Hero Award from the Michigan Leadership Center for his support of the Lagan Outdoor Center. And Mr. Sheik does a lot of work with his kids out in that area, which is awesome. And something kind of exciting too, the Little Dragons Learning Center was named the favorite for daycare in the View. This is the Reader's Choice Award, and it's the first time that Swartz Creek's ever received that honor. So very cool.
Congratulations.
That is it.
Okay. So Chuck, to your point, we now have public comment at the beginning of the meeting that's agenda specific.
Okay.
So I'm going to use chair's prerogative, and let's go to consent agenda first. And you wanted to change the agenda?
And it may be underneath the superintendent's, no, I just want to add something to it. And I understand that an email went out, but I didn't get the email yet. It's not popping up, and I didn't get a call. But I wanted to put the elementary school talks that you guys have had, and I think it was probably done before I came on in the office. I don't know if you guys did that in December or January. Was it December or January?
We had some conversations in December.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I never remember it coming to me officially, except just what we've talked about at the board. So I kind of want to add that to it, and Ben may have that underneath his report already. So I don't know if that was one of your agenda items that you wanted.
Yeah, it's I am going to address it slightly in my report. It's not officially on the agenda. It hasn't ever been an action item, but
Right.
yeah.
Are you okay if we just talk with it?
Yeah, we've had several discussions on it. Should be on the agenda, but it's okay if you guys don't want to follow that procedure. That's fine with me.
Is that anything else?
No, I just
Okay.
thought I'd follow parliamentary procedure on that when you add something. You know, if we're going to discuss an item.
And I think your plan was to talk about it in
Correct.
your report tonight.
I'm sorry if you didn't get it. I can forward it to you. It went to the SWCRK.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now. So it may take a minute for it to pop up. Then.
Okay.
So
Okay, so with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Support. Mike, Tony. Any comments or questions? Hearing those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now we can go back to public comments that are agenda specific. So anything that's listed on our agenda this evening. Is there anybody? We will have another opportunity at the end of the meeting on number 11. Okay, all right. Now back to you, Ben, for the superintendent report.
So a couple things to bring you up to speed on. First, there is a program that was filmed. It was actually filmed in Davison. It's called The Ring of Silence. It is it's a movie. It was actually filmed in Davison High School and a couple other locations in Michigan. I'm going to be viewing that on March 21st with a couple members of our staff, and the video is really about human trafficking and some of the epidemic that we're seeing even in high school kids. And so we're bringing back a report on that. I believe that it is an issue that is actually under represented and discussed. It's a serious concern even in Genesee County. And so I will bring back a report of that, but there's a private viewing on March 21st, and I'm going to consider, you know, the possibility of actually having that as an opportunity to show to some of our students, maybe having an event at the Performing Arts Center, inviting parents and families out. So I'd like to kind of get the gist of the video. I know it in concept, but that's something that's coming up. I also have a bit of a legislative update that I'd like to go through, update you on. Just keep this and get this one. The first of which, and I won't go through each step of this, but Governor Whitmer unveiled what she is personally describing as the largest pre-K to 14 investment in a generation. She has released the details of her budget proposal, and we've started to analyze those a little bit. What it basically breaks down to for Swartz Creek is about $180 per student. There are some interesting dynamics in her budget proposal that deal with specific populations of students. So students that have special needs, students that are in a at-risk situation, GSRP students. There's a variety of interesting and intriguing proposals that are in her budget. Before I or any of you should get too excited about that, this is just her proposal, so we still have to hear from both chambers of the legislature, the House and the Senate. Her proposal, you know that she's very adamant about fixing the roads, and so one of the things that this is predicated on is a 45-cent gas tax, and I'm not sure that that has much likelihood of passing through the other chambers, but that is something that is she has proposed in her executive budget. So be aware that these are preliminary. It's usually a good, you know, it's a good sign when the governor's budget starts out positively like this, but we have to go through the revenue consensus hearings, and it's usually a matter of about a month. We'll know something in the next, 3 to 4 weeks on when the others generate their budget. So more to come on that. House Bill 4206 is a companion bill to Senate Bill 0300. I sent an email out to the community and the parents just about the snow days. This bill deals with the state of emergency days. It basically allows for the governor to issue, and anytime the governor issues a state of emergency, the Michigan Department of Education or the state superintendent would have the ability to grant forgiveness for those days as well as the original 6 that are there. That would apply to this year as well. If this bill passes and actually makes it into law, which couldn't even feasibly happen until mid to end of April, what we would essentially not be required to make up any school days because of the fact that 4 of the days that were in the polar vortex week would have been declared as state of emergency. So we're waiting to see if this bill passes. If it does not pass, as I said in my letter, or if there's no ability for this to get across the finish line before year's end, we are currently slated to have 3 days of additional days to make up to get to our statutory 180 days, 1098 hours of instruction. House Bill 4162 is the elimination of the work key, the ACT work keys test. This is a test that's no longer used by employers. It's costing the state several million, about $5.5 million just to administer this test, and so that's on the chopping block as well. The House has been very active early on. House Bill 4207 takes away some of the limits on teacher effectiveness ratings, meaning that no school district could impose a limit on any number or percentage of teachers who could earn a summative evaluation rating, which I disagree with that process anyway, so I think that's a good thing to have in place. House Bill 4208, just again with evaluations that they can't be conducted by family members, which makes total sense. And the one that we have really been keeping our eye on is Senate Bill 122, House Bill 4221 is the companion bill. These bills would return the percentage of a teacher's evaluation based on student assessment to 25%. That was the law up until this year. In lame duck, they tried to move this across. It's got bipartisan support. Currently, the law is 40%. So we'll see what happens with that, and we'll be tracking that. But the timing of this legislation makes it unlikely that this law would apply to this year. So we may have this very odd year this year where 40% it goes to my evaluation, teacher's evaluation, administrator's evaluation would still be at that 40% and then roll back to 25 next year. So these are some bills to keep an eye on. Anybody have any questions at first glance? Okay. Had the opportunity last week to meet for the first time with our Citizens Oversight Committee. This is a committee comprised of about 13 people. The purpose of the committee, as we've explained, is to communicate out information about bond progress. There isn't a lot of information to communicate out just yet, although there's some. We'll talk about a little of that tonight. The community just met on our first meeting to kind of get organized. Mr. Dennings is actually here. He's a part of that team. And we're going to, that committee is also responsible to kind of keep an eye on things as they cross the, as they cross our desks and will be communicated out to the public. So I shared with them some information on the budget for the bond, shared with them some information on the timeline of the projects and so on and so forth. And they're having some conversations now about how to communicate that out. And it'll take a couple meetings, and then we'll be pretty organized and get off the ground with that group. So I'm excited to be meeting with them. Our first board workshop of the year was last week, March 4th, and we spent some time, which we'll talk about a little bit today, on strategic planning. I did pass out a book, I believe. Tony, I've got a copy for you. So.
I bought one.
Oh, did you? Okay, I apologize. The book is called The Coddling of the American Mind. Have any of you started reading it yet? Not to put you on the spot. Okay, all right. Good job. Mike gets brownie points. Did it first. So the book, the gist of the book, the kind of the subtext here is how we as parents, educators, grandparents have really set our children up for unsuccess or failure. By the way that we have, quite frankly, treated them and removed a lot of adversity from their lives. We are living in a safety culture, and in a lot of ways that's good. We want to make sure we're doing everything we can to protect our children. But at the same time, it leads to a generation of what we would refer to, and I think we all know them when we see them, lawnmower or helicopter parenting, and or grandparenting for that matter. And so the book includes a lot of research. It's very well written. And so I think over the course of this year, it would be a great book study for us as a board. And so you each have a copy of that, and we'll explore that as we kind of move forward. I wanted to just update you. I did send the email out to you today, which I sent out to the district and the parents. We've been having very productive conversation about the elementary schools, and we've talked at board meetings. We've talked, through our committees and obviously at our first public meeting about the possibility of looking at the merits of an early elementary, upper elementary structure versus a traditional structure that we have currently. As a part of that conversation, we've gotten a lot of feedback. There have been a lot of supportive feedback. There's been feedback that's been oppositional to it, and I think it's been a healthy conversation. At this time, there's nothing that I feel would be imperative that we would rush into anything, and so as I communicated in the email, I wouldn't be asking the board to make any decisions on it. It's at this point going to stay as a conversation. I think it's imperative that we continue to explore some of the challenges we face, look at the data, look at what's best for our children, and we'll continue to monitor best practices and look at those things. I want to maintain a culture in our district of having conversations about these tough issues. There are things that we have to do if we're gonna move our district forward in a positive way. Also, sorry, I know I'm going kinda long here. I wanna talk to everybody, just let you know. I know this is an issue that's very important to Carrie, and me as well. This is a workshop. I'm just letting you know about it. On March 26th, it's actually at the Cooley Law School in Auburn Hills. This is the title of the talk is Breaking the Cycle, and it's talking about the opioid crisis that we're facing. Our students in school face many challenges with this. This has become a drug that is very different than what a lot of our parents have maybe experienced when they went to school. It's a totally different type of drug, and it is an epidemic in our country and in our state. And so I'm going to be working on getting some more information on this topic, but I think it might be a wise visit. If you had the room in your schedule, you're more than invited to go to this. You do need to register for it. It's a free event, but you can register on that website there if you're interested in learning more about it. So that is all I have.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for this.
Sure.
It is near and dear to my heart, and I spend many of my days talking about the topic. I'm sure you see it in your practice, even with children.
Unfortunately.
So, okay, moving on. We have informational items on the agenda, employment of non-certified staff. Those are listed in your packet for information. And any questions on those? Okay, board subcommittee reports. I think, Mike, you had a finance committee on Monday?
Yes. We met Monday. We received and discussed a cash and investment summary report. You have a copy, you should have a copy in your packet. Check register for February has been reviewed, and the following was noted. General fund, 112 checks for $373,711. Internal fund, 47 checks in the amount of $32,495. CDC, 6 checks in the amount of $60,175. Cafeteria fund, 4 checks in the amount of $73,130. We discussed the bond project bid package number 2 for the secured entries, and they were on the steering committee agenda, and I understand it's going to be talked about tonight. We received the report on the Little Dragons Learning Center renovation cost. The total was $575,518, of which $250,723 came out of GSRP grants. The remaining came out of the sinking fund. There were no public comments. Under committee comments, Chris mentioned the award to the LDC from the county, which Ben has already covered. Congratulations to Dave Szymanczyk and his staff. And Ben also reported that the murals at the Little Dragons is near completion, and an open house will be held soon. This meeting is April 10th. I think your copy is going to say the 15th, but it was moved to the 10th at 3 p.m.
Is it the
Adjourned at
8th?
three.
Is it the 8th?
The 8th.
Pardon?
Is it the 8th?
April the 8th.
Well, you're right. I'm sorry. It would be the 8th. Meetings changed to the 10th. We adjourned at 3:45 p.m.
Any
Any
questions for Mike? Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Tony?
Yeah, we, building and site met also Monday we started at 3:45 after finance committee. We discussed that we signed or re-signed, lawn care, which is a phenomenal deal we got, and the guy does a phenomenal job. We added 2 buildings and increased the fee by $250.
I don't think it was that much.
Yeah.
250.
225.
225.
Yeah, I thought it was
Yeah.
225.
For adding 2 buildings.
Wow. Give him a great, thank you.
Yeah.
We're gonna put bus 60 on the state website for sale in April. Hope to get a good amount for that. We started discussions of a new custodial contract. Are we gonna stay with DM Burr or what we're gonna do? And youth baseball is gonna modify Elms and Morris baseball fields for their use to improve them. They're gonna do it with their own money, so that's real good for them and us. We adjourned at 5 o'clock and we meet April 8th at 4.
Right. Did we put a second bus on there?
The,
I thought we were gonna talk about
Maybe
that
in
second
July,
bus. Is
yeah.
that what we were gonna do?
Yeah, yeah, we'll put them both up there on the
Yeah.
site.
well,
and
one
then-
in April, one in July, right?
Yep.
That was the handicap,
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay, good.
you're right.
That's all I had to add
Yep.
to it, yeah.
Any questions for Tony? Thanks, Tony. All right, we had a academic achievement meeting on Monday, this past Monday, and our committee met to look at the MTSS district meeting that was held and the district report cards. And Katie Preer was very patient and kind of led us through all of the data. We asked a lot of questions, and we talked about the STAR math and reading as well as the DIBELS testing. We did talk about the difference between the buildings and some of the grade levels. In particular, we talked about the third grade reading law that's in effect starting this next year, and how we are going to proactively help our kids so that they are gaining proficiency. We also talked about student discipline data, and that was a very interesting conversation. And Mike had a lot of questions to ask that were really good questions, and I think as we look at that data, people will be interested to see it's not really what you think. I don't, are we gonna share that at some point with this group? We can?
We can.
Okay, so, interesting to see, we looked at the relationship between kids that were at risk and discipline, and probably not what you would assume, so, any questions on that? We can get you the information. The documentation is really interesting, and Katie does a really nice job. We did talk too about, having, I think she meets with Grand Blanc.
Yep.
She's gonna be meeting with Grand Blanc, with
Kersley
Kersley,
And Lake Fenton.
and Grand Blanc she talked
and
about.
Lake Fenton.
And they have coordinators that address literacy.
Yep.
Yeah,
So they are,
learning from them and sharing information about what we're doing.
so one of the things that we're doing is doing a crosswalk with our early literacy essentials based on our program that we purchased last year, Reading Wonders, and then the state's early literacy essentials. And there's a couple of other districts that are doing different PD with that and aligning their early literacy essentials. Everyone is waiting to see the outcome of what happens with the third grade reading law next year, so there's a lot of work being done at the county meeting. There's a lot of sharing going on, so they've contacted a few people. In our next instructional coaches meeting, they're gonna actually come in and spend an hour with us about some of the things they've done.
Very interesting though, so we should probably share some of that information with the board at some point, maybe a presentation, a short presentation. I don't know what your schedule looks like, but maybe having Katie come in and go over some of the highlights of what we looked at.
GISD curriculum specialists have asked me to share that with them, so I'm already getting that together.
Okay. Okay, good. Any questions? No? Okay. Just briefly, on the 4th of March, we had a training session with Scott Morrell from MASB. We met for about half the day and talked a lot about topics. Some of them were new to our new board members. Some of them was just good refresher for everybody. And that meeting led into our strategic planning session. And I think we're gonna talk a little bit more about that on the agenda, but that was also very helpful, kind of step back, look at what we're doing as a district, what we need to be looking at longer term, and so we'll talk about that. Any questions? Most of you were here, Tony, we missed you very much. So that was that meeting. I didn't miss any other meetings, did I? We didn't have policy?
No.
We canceled policy. We're good? Okay.
Brian.
Steering
Brian,
committee?
steering, you were talking about steering?
Yeah, I could. Ken, that was today. We met at 3. We had the architects here, the construction managers here, and actually I thought it was a very productive dialogue discussion, because We will discuss the bids today that we got, and very, very disappointed. So we're gonna have to, we're gonna have that discussion anyway, so I don't wanna just talk about that right now. But anyway, the whole, it was, I thought, exceptional discussion, and Mike, Tony, you were here also, Ben led this discussion. As far as them coordinating and talking and strategizing different ideas of what we can do to see about getting a different bid package, and maybe possibly even wrapping it in a different way. So that's gonna be discussion coming up on the agenda. Other than that, I'm gonna leave the other elements out, since we're gonna be talking about that today. The details of that. I don't wanna be redundant.
Any questions for Brian?
It was just a good meeting, and we've got, I think it's April 10th is our next meeting, 3 o'clock.
Okay, thank you, Brian. All right, moving on, we have board discussion items. ACES, are you going to do that presentation? Or?
I am.
You are?
Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna take this off just so we get a brighter picture there. So ACES is the Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey. It's what we've, this research is a lot of what we've based on our trauma work over the last 2 years. So there's a lot of information about the study, and I just kind of want to do a 10-minute overview. I could probably run easily a half-day or a 2-hour workshop on this, but I'm going to compact it in 10 minutes, and then at the end I'll try to answer any questions that you have. And I have tons of resources if you want me to send things out later on. So we're going to go over the study. I'm going to show you the questionnaire and have you actually read the questions yourself. It's only a 10-question questionnaire. So it's a one-pager. You'll be able to see the actual people who took the study in the original study. This is that questionnaire. We're going to talk about outcomes and who's at risk for some of these health, emotional, social risks. And then I want to talk about how we're addressing trauma in Swartz Creek, both at a program level and then also like specific strategies, and then again resources and questions.
Questionnaire went out already, you said, Rod?
No, I'm gonna
Okay.
hand it out right now. It's a paper copy.
Okay.
So first, before I hand out the questionnaire, the study, the original, there's been many studies after this, but there was an original study. It was the largest study of its kind. It involved over 17,000 members in the CDC and Kaiser. It's called the CDC Kaiser A study out of California. And they basically sent confidential experience studies to their HMO members. And as they collected these studies about these experiences from childhood, they fell into 3 categories: abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. So it is a 10-point survey. I'm just going to have you kind of take a look at those. If at any point in any question, 1 through 10, you answer yes, because they're all multiple part questions, that's a point. If at any point you would answer no, that's a 0. And so then you go question by question. You can do this in your head, you can read it, you can do it on paper. Obviously, I'm not collecting this. This is just so you understand what people are being asked when they took the ACE, or anyone who takes it now. And so you can see that there are questions about the household, things that have happened in the household, how old you were. Everything in this particular survey is when you were birthed to 18. So what happened in your household as you were a child and an adolescent? How did you feel about that? What kind of drugs, alcohol, abuse?
So that is the ACE questionnaire. A lot of tough questions there, which has led to a lot of research in trauma. And I want to talk about some of those outcomes. But first, in that original big study of over 17,000 people, 33% had no ACEs. So on that page, they answered no to every single question. 25% said they had one ACE. So somewhere on there they said yes. 15% had 2, 10% 3. So 4 or more would be 17%. So 17% of the entire study had 4 or more ACEs. So basically 2/3 had an adverse childhood experience, birth to 18. Some of the data also says if one ACE is present, there's an 87% chance that there's another ACE. And also women are 50% more likely to have 5 or more ACEs than men are. This is a nice graph that kind of talks about some of the ways this is categorized out, some of the categories, some more percents. So as you can see on the upper right hand side, it talks about the types of abuse, neglect, and dysfunction. And then on the left hand side, you can see the percent of those types of adverse experiences. So under abuse, of those that checked abuse, 28% checked physical, 20 sexual, and 10.6 emotional. You can then see the numbers for neglect and then dysfunction. And under dysfunction, we're talking about substance abuse, divorce, mental illness, watching your mother treated violently, or any incarceration, prison time. And then on the very bottom right is the outcomes. And I got a whole list up here I'm going to show you, but these are some of the things that as your ACEs go up, you see the little 0 ACE, 1 ACE, 2 ACE, 3 ACE, 4 ACE, as your ACEs scores go up. So as you've answered more yeses on that survey, the risks increase exponentially. So risks of smoking, risks of alcoholism, risks of drug use, risks of health risks, heart risks, liver risks, diabetes risks. It's not just social emotional, but actually physical risks. And so there's a more comprehensive list up there. These are risks for everyone, but again, as you experience more ACEs, 0 to 18, your risks of these risks grow exponentially. And so again, it's not just mental health. Mental health is up there, but it's also physical health, liver disease, heart disease, obviously the smoking and drugs and alcohol, sexually transmitted diseases, suicide. Then you have things like poor work performance, poor academic performance, financial stress. So if these traumas have happened to someone, these risks greatly increase. This is a nice chart taking, for example, some of those outcomes and what happens as people have more and more ACEs. So here you got smoking, alcohol, drugs, heart disease, and suicide. And so for example, let's take alcohol. Someone with no ACEs, just the general population, you had no adverse childhood experiences in your life growing up, 0 to 18, there's still a 1 in 69 chance that you're going to be an alcoholic. But with 3 ACEs in the middle column, that now increases to a 1 in 9 chance of alcoholism, and 7 or more ACEs, a 1 in 6 chance of alcoholism. So again, as the ACEs go up, the chances that these risks greatly go up. You can see the same for drugs, 1 in 480 to 1 in 43 to 1 in 30. The one that concerns me the most, that I think all educators have been dealing with in the last 10 years on a much greater scale than we ever have before, is the last line, and that's the suicide attempts. So the general population, you're at risk, 1 in 96. With 3 ACEs, 1 in 10 attempt suicide. And with 7 or more ACEs, 1 in 5. What you need to understand about that percent, that is the greatest increase of any other risk. And that goes from essentially 1% to 10% to 20%. If I have 7 or more adverse childhood experiences, I have a 20% chance, likelihood, that I'm going to attempt suicide at some point in my life. So what are we doing in Swartz Creek? The MTSS team, you know, I brag about them all the time. It was Jody. You know, it's been Katie for a couple of years, but even before that, we've had some amazing people. They start talking about trauma and poverty and at-risk students like 3-4 years ago. What are we doing? We're seeing an increase in our at-risk students. We're seeing an increase in behaviors. And then when Ben brought in 5D, one of the components of that instructional framework is classroom environment and culture. And so one of the last things we've been really concentrating on, it's been our focus area 2 years in a row, is that classroom environment and a culture. And so we talked to our teachers about engagement, about how you interact, about how you build relationships. In fact, one of the most positive conversations that I heard this year is when we told the staff, don't do any curriculum for 30 days. Now that's really hard for some people who feel like they have a curriculum that's a mile long. But we know that if you don't build a relationship, when you get to March, like we are now, and things start falling apart, the curriculum doesn't matter anymore. Some of you know, most of you know that I'm on Twitter a lot, and I see all the time people talking about relationships. At Sewell Chat, we talk about relationships, and people are always saying, man, I wish my district would just say it's okay to just spend time building relationships. So when we said that, I mean, that was awesome. I think that was a big impact this year, and I think it's paying some dividends. We're trauma-informed care. We had 22 people, some consultants, teacher specialists, speech, some regular teachers, some principals, some social workers, and a variety of people go through a 4-day training. What is trauma? What does it look like? What do you do? And they can now help us train others, train teachers, run staff meetings, train parapros. What does trauma look like? How do you handle trauma? From that, we started wellness rooms. So every room every building in the district has a space where we don't talk about necessarily the behavior. And this, again, is like before discipline happens. I'm not talking about after discipline. Before discipline. It's not about a behavior choice. It's more about, are you regulated or not regulated? Because people who are at risk, who have poverty, who are in trauma, get unregulated. As adults, we get unregulated. You ever talk to someone, all of a sudden their voice goes up and all of a sudden they're mad and you don't know why they're mad? They're not regulated. And if we don't teach our kids how to breathe, how to regulate, then they can't learn. No child in a classroom who's not regulated is learning. And so we talk about 2 types of regulation, over-regulation and under-regulation. And so someone who's over-regulated obviously is losing their mind and running around and really excited to the point that they're not focused. And someone who's under-regulated is depressed and slouching and sleeping, and they're not learning. And so we really got to talk about how we're making sure that there's a safe spot and not too safe from that conversation, because I'm talking about resiliency in a second, because that's the same research that this talks about, is a place where they can be well, someone who's not regulated. MTSS has continued to work on this. Our PBIS kickoffs used to be, hey, what are our expectations? We teach them every year, but now we're talking about trauma, we're talking about wellness rooms, we're talking about what are you doing in your building, we're talking about the book study we ran. So we're doing some good work. We've increased social work. A couple years ago we had 2 social workers. We now have 4 social workers. We've split them with some general ed and special ed so that they can not just hit our special ed kids, because that's usually what a school social worker does. They work with kids that have IEPs, but we've now funded it so they can work with everyone. And the high school has a full-time social worker, never leaves the building. The middle school has a full-time social worker, never leaves the building. Huge impact on our buildings that have full-time social workers. And as you guys know, because we've done so many policy changes and law changes over the last couple of years, restorative practices. You have to have restorative practices before you can even suspend. But that's more like, oh, I have to do because of legally. Restorative practices are also important because we want to get everyone back on the same page. We want to solve the issue. We want to bring everyone into regulation. We want to be able to move on. So those are just in 2 years, the programming that we've been working on. And then this is more of a, okay, so that was the programming. What should we be doing? Like, what are the strategies? Number one, build relationship. We have to be building relationships. If you don't have a relationship and you have trauma, then you're not going to make an impact. Number two, connect every student with a trusted adult. Ton of research out there saying you don't need 10 adults, you don't need 5 adults. If you can connect every kid with 1 adult, you can make an impact on the direction of their life. Build resiliency. So that goes along with what Ben was talking about. Our kids need to learn how to have some resiliency. They need to learn how to take risks. They need to learn that failure is okay. Because if they're not having that resiliency, then we're just perpetuating everything that he talked about with the coddling of America. And then use brain research and best instructional practice. The biggest impact that I learned about brain research a couple weeks ago was poverty and brain research. It was trauma and brain research. And it kind of goes along the line of this, you can make a difference and turn a child around, is that the brain is always making new connections. And that we're always learning, and IQ is not static. You can always learn. And she just showed us all sorts of research on different things you can do and the way that you create synapses. And basically, she said educators, are brain molders. So you may start here, but you have the impact through good strategies to impact the academic life of the kid, and I would say with this research also the social emotional. For those of you that are Facebook savvy, these are 2 sites that I've run into that do a lot of articles and things out there. So one is Connect the Dot to ACEs, and if you see that picture on the right there, that's their picture on their page. And the other one is Trauma Informed Positive Behavior Support. I'm assuming it's in Europe because it's spelled like that. But good resources. We've been working on positive behavior for 10 years. I was pretty excited to run across this, but because basically they took the guise of positive behavior and melded it with all the trauma that we're seeing, and how do we use positive behavior to also think about our kids that are in trauma and what can we do about meeting their needs. So that was a little over 10 minutes, but questions on that?
So, if you gave a parent what we just looked at, that might reflect your experience. You give a child the same survey, they may or may not have the influence of their parent. But I think it's fair to say, based on the research, that there's a strong correlation between the parent's experience and the child's experience.
Yeah, and there's a lot of research that talks about just the effects of trauma from living with someone who has trauma.
Yes.
There's a research that says that teachers who have kids who are experiencing a lot of trauma have trauma. Adults who work with people who have trauma have secondary trauma. So I would say absolutely anyone who is in close connection with someone else that has the trauma, they have secondary trauma. Or they have ACEs themselves because the person who has trauma hasn't, learned to become whole and healthy and heal.
Is there an opportunity based on your training? So you went through the Train the Trainer program.
I was in and out.
You were in, okay.
But we do have another one coming up in April. We're
Okay.
gonna rehash that whole thing.
So is there an opportunity for the district not only to address this with students, but to start to look at families who may be interested? If they know what the topic is and what it means, they may self-identify as somebody who, maybe if I get some insight to what I experienced and what's going on, or how maybe I lash out to my child because that's what I learned as a child. Can we do something like that?
We could do anything. At first, the MTS team was really cautious about doing anything with this survey. It's a very personal survey. We don't want to be collecting people's information. And we know what trauma is and what to do about trauma and how to impact trauma. So at this point, the team was uncomfortable doing anything with kids right now with that survey, but I think a parent night or anything like that, where people understand what the agenda is and what they're there to learn, I think if it's facilitated well, is obviously a good thing. Anytime you can have some education on that.
When you think about what some of our teachers and principals have experienced in their life, education has changed a lot. Certainly from when I went to school, and definitely from when some of the people around this table went to school. And so at the end of the day, when you think about education in general, it used to be you sit down, you shut your mouth, you look at the teacher, and if you're not learning, it's your fault, figure it out. And we were trained to teach that way, even as I've been in this business for 20 years, and it's even my teacher preparation was that. You go through and you have these things and you're delivering information. Teaching has morphed, and it's passed a lot of us that have been in this a while by, because we haven't been able to adapt to the fact that relationships are more important than the content that you deliver. And this research really highlights that. So some of the challenges that we've had is helping support all of our staff in that if I have for 20 years, if I'm using myself as an example, you know, and high expectations are critical in a classroom. But if I've kind of had this mantra of I've got a system that works, I give out this assignment and the kids do it or they don't, and then it's on them, and you know, I'm all about delivering the content, I'm missing opportunities with our kids. And what we know about our population of students, not just in Swartz Creek but across the United States, is that they're experiencing these things at higher rates. And so it's imperative that adults, as Rod said, become brain molders, but they also become relationship builders. If you're not building relationships, and if kids do not feel like you care about them, they will not learn. And the research is that clear. So people can stand and say, you know, if they're not learning, it's their fault and it's the kid's fault. Well, that's one perspective. But the reality is that some kids are going to learn in spite of their instruction. Some kids are going to learn no matter what you put in front of them. But the majority of kids, if they don't feel like there's a relationship, are not going to learn. And so that's why we place the emphasis there. There's a ton of research on it. It's in our instructional framework, as Rod described. And I have to say, Rod's done a ton of work leading this throughout the district. And I think we're just scratching the surface. I think there's a lot more we can do. But I wanted you as a board to be aware of some of these issues that we're facing. It's not the same old school that we went to when we were kids, and even when I started teaching, it's just drastically different.
So what are we gonna do with this form? What's the end purpose of this?
So this right here is the actual ACEs questionnaire. So this questionnaire is
That's where the research.
that's where the
originally came
research has
from.
come from.
Who's it gonna go to in our district, though? Are you planning on
haven't
doing
done
anything?
that.
We're
with
not
this?
doing that yet. We're not collecting this information, but we were trying to bring awareness around what this study is and then the implications of it. And we know that we have kids that are in this, and so discussing, you know, some of this is kind of sensitive.
Right.
You know, we don't want to be dealing with people's private stuff, but we do want to understand that we have kids that we already know. So this actually becomes less important. And if we just assume that there are going to be kids that need some of these practices, we need to be engaging in some of those practices.
Yeah, I just wanna give this out to any children. If they start marking some of those things, then we're gonna be liable to investigate and get involved in a whole multitude of things that I don't think we're prepared for.
I think one of its greater uses is with the parents to identify
Yeah.
what
That-
they went through and or what they're observing
That-
with their families.
I just wanna know who we're,
Yeah.
if it is even gonna be given out to, who's it gonna be given to, who's gonna monitor it.
I actually brought this so that you could understand the
Yeah.
basis of the
Good.
research.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the research is really what has led to the trauma-informed training. So it's teaching others, especially adults, to be aware that a lot of children are coming forward with this kind of background, and it just changes your frame of reference and your focus. I mean, coming from the medical field, we struggle with, even if you have that information, then what do you do with it and how do you treat them appropriately? And you know, to your question of, you know, getting it out to our parents and informing more of the public, it's a great idea. the struggle will be, you have to be able to find them resources. And unfortunately, just nationally, it's, that's difficult.
To your point, Chuck, this oftentimes would be given by a physician
Yeah.
under the care of a parent and their child, so
Right.
that, we're not equipped to do that, but
Yeah.
this is so that you can understand where that research comes from.
That's, yeah, I don't wanna get involved, cause there's, not only is there medical, there's law enforcement involved in there and all sorts of, on the criminal justice side, if people start saying, yeah, that somebody touched me and we know about it.
Yeah.
I mean, we have an obligation to tell people and I wanna, investigate it wholeheartedly, but I don't wanna open up a can of worms for us.
Yeah.
So good, that's good, that answers my question, thank you.
And for anybody who might be interested, and I don't know if it's available on Netflix or if you can just get it free, but the movie Resilience talks about this whole topic, and it's very moving.
Resilience.
Resilience. It's very, very moving. It's
Is
a
it a
documentary, it's a
documentary?
documentary,
Okay,
and it's
alright.
very moving.
Yeah, I will open that up for the board if we're interested. I don't believe that it's available to anybody. I think you have to purchase it. But I do have access to view that if we wanted to do that. We own it, so.
Okay, good, thank you. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob, I appreciate that. Okay, next we have, Cage Sports rental agreement discussion.
So I'm gonna pass this around, so we've had some conversations about our current rental agreement with Cage Sports. This is a hot off the press because we were just able to get it in the late hours today.
You already have it?
It's an updated version.
So the contract's been
This-
updated since
Yeah,
this one
just,
came
yeah,
off of the
this is
agenda?
just got updated this afternoon, so
Okay.
I'm giving you the cleanest copy. I went ahead and I reached out to our contract lawyer and I just asked him to look over the contract. And so he did make some adjustments in there, just things that are kind of notable to protect the district. One of the additional things that I was able to get moved was, in working with Mr. Weber, the discount pass moved from $3 to $2, so we got an additional $1 off on that. There are some things in here that were just wording changes and semantics. This is a 1-year contract. Some of the highlights, as we've discussed, are consistent billings for a monthly basis. A guaranteed income of $70,000, which, as you've seen the previous Cage revenue, we have not been receiving that amount. The additional pieces here, you've seen, we've talked about them, but this is a 1-year contract. I've talked to Cage Sports about this, and I think in the future, any additional contracts, we would have our attorneys draft up a more lengthy proposal. They feel like that we're protected with this, but I wanted to allow you that intro, and then you can discuss your thoughts, and then we will actually be voting as a board today on this rental agreement.
Number 3, I'll start out, number 3, in the event Cage Sports Clubs cannot replace one of the days used by Swartz Creek Schools, Swartz Creek Schools will reimburse Cage Sports Club $1,000 for the loss of the date requested. And that because we bumped them out of that date, is that what that's saying?
So almost always, when we take a day that they have designated on here,
Yep.
we would find them another day.
Okay,
In the event that we were not willing to give them another day, or we just took a day from them, then they would essentially pay us $69,000 instead of $70,000, if that makes sense. So
okay.
they're basically, that's their protection, that they still get to have 75 days. That's what they're paying for. And if they don't get the 75 days, which is a reduction from their previous contract, they would, they wouldn't have to pay the full fee.
Okay.
Yeah.
And not
I
to,
struggled on that one too.
yeah, that's all right, Lisa, I got one more question, 'cause Mike had brought up a very valid point at our finance committee that they were paying us anywhere from $45,000 to $50,000 a year on the average, and that they were using at least 75 to 85 days a year. How did we let that, and some of us weren't here, me and Alicia weren't here, how did that slip through the cracks? And the cracks. And you may not have been here, Ben, for most of it, so.
Yeah, I
That was
wouldn't
a
say that.
5-year thing. How did we not bill them for that? We lost a lot of revenue over the past 4 or 5 years.
So it's not actually accurate that we lost revenue and that we didn't bill them.
Okay.
The contract was set up so that if you were to look at the total number of days and add all the number of days up, you would get to a number that was different from what their actual usage was. Which is why in this contract I've added, regardless of whether you use the days or not, you're paying this fee. So they're being billed and they're paying for their usage that they used, but they didn't use all the days that they had slated. So it became impossible for us to budget, and they were being billed, but they were being billed on the days that they actually used.
Were we told ahead of time that they weren't gonna use it? I mean, those days,
Yes, so in some cases, we were told ahead of time, you know, they work with our community ed and everything else to set those up. But I think what may have, and I wasn't here for this, but it could have been that they were, you know, proposing that you're gonna be paid for those amounts, or the assumption is that, and they didn't use all of those days.
Or they may have used days and we didn't keep track of them and we didn't bill them. Cause they use it more than 60 days, cause at $800 a day, that's $48,000. That's all we got paid on the average, from what Mike came up with for the 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's kind of spilled milk. I just wanna make sure this doesn't happen again. As I told you
That's-
before, and I know that you did a good job on this contract, but a public entity such as a school district should not be supporting a private business when that's public taxpayer dollars
I agree.
funding that. I just, and if we lose money on it, so be it, if we don't run it out, but I don't think we should be able to supplement somebody's private business that sold us a facility, then he turns around and rents it again from us, and we're paying all the upkeep, all the maintenance, all the insurance, all the cleaning, everything. I just, and I know we gotta come up with income to help pay for the bill on it. So that's just what I struggle with on this.
Back to number 3. Are we protected? This is, what I wanna make sure is that if we ask for a day, they give us the day that we're requesting, and we've provided them an alternative day, that they're basically, that they have to cover that day, whether they're able to, so if we offer them another day,
Yeah.
we're giving them a day off our books.
Yeah.
But
Let-
now
let-
they can sit back, can they say, well, yeah, you gave me that day, but I can't find anybody that's actually gonna use it that day. So I struggle that they may, it's easier for them to just not pay that $1,000
Correct.
than really work hard to try to fill the extra
Right,
day we
right.
actually gave them.
Yeah, I understand. I think if you look at it from, and I know we're not looking, I think you have to look at it from their perspective. If we were to just unscripted go in and say, well, we're gonna take that day, and 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 they have nothing in here for recourse, well, we could just take all their days and collect their money, and
Yeah.
obviously they wouldn't enter into a contract like that. So,
Okay.
you know, I think there's gotta be some understanding of the fact that they're essentially paying for the 75 days now. They weren't in the previous contract, and so that's why we put that in there.
Okay.
You know?
I only know of one time that we asked for days, and that would have been for the archery tournament last year, correct?
Correct.
I don't know of any other days. I drive by that cage every day, every weekend, unless I'm out of town. I go by it when I go to church, I go by it on Saturday. Place is crowded. There aren't many days that they don't use it. And the problem with, they give us the schedule of them days. And we assume they're using them. And we certainly don't have the opportunity to set something up to use it when, you know, it's a last minute thing. I mean, we've still lost. I've got a lot more to say, but, and I don't wanna be redundant, but I'll wait to listen to the rest of you.
Who's gonna run oversight on the billing, the invoicing?
We'll do that now in our business department.
Is there some kind of software, or just, it's gonna be one, okay,
This simplifies things. What we had before was not working.
right?
So this simplifies it because we know what they're being billed every month. It's clear.
And we know what dates they're using unless we change it.
Correct.
So that is a huge improvement over what was in the past.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
And then it gives us 1 year to reevaluate again.
It's a short
whether
term.
it was worth it or not.
Correct.
And I do appreciate you lowering the cost to the community. Any other questions for
Yeah,
Jen?
I
Go ahead.
do.
Yeah, that's right, you said you were gonna let all of us talk.
Some of this is gonna be redundant now, but I worked so hard in this, I'm gonna read it.
Okay.
In 2011, the district purchased the Cage Fieldhouse for $2.5 million on a land contract. In 2013, it was refinanced with an installment purchase agreement at an interest rate of 2.69%. The annual payment is $178,265. There's 3 payments left. At the time of the purchase, the sellers asked for and received a contract for weekend rental of the Cage to continue their basketball leagues and tournaments for an estimated $8,000 a month. The then superintendent told the board and was quoted in the Front Journal article, quote, "The school district under the contract will not pay a nickel for anything referring to building costs such as heating, lighting, and repairs. The district has been under contract with them since the purchase. The current contract is for 3 years and expires June 30th of this year. If the district had received $8,000 a month, it would have received between $80,000 and $100,000 annually. Currently, they are renting for 10 months. I don't know what year, if you're looking at those papers that we got, they had dates both in July and August. This is the first year that shows that they're only using it 10 months. I don't know when that changed. I got a feeling it changed before this year, but I mean during the course of this contract. But I don't know when. But now it's 10 months. Currently they're renting for 10 months. Here are the fiscal year revenue amounts for the past 5 years. 2015, $51,975. 2016, $53,325. 2017, $57,000. 2018, $43,440. And this year through January, and this figure is different than what you've got on the printout. It's $28,050. I think the printout says 41, but the first 2 entries, if you look closely, are for earlier, for May and paying off, or paying up to the last fiscal year, the fiscal year starting in July. We are on board, or we do expect, and I figured it out by taking that 28,000, and I took the days that they have it reserved for, which is 50 days after January, and it's currently at $825, and it came to, I got so many figures, came to 40, I'm not sure.
It's about 40.
I'm not gonna say because but it doesn't,
Times 825, it's
It-
41.2.
it will, no, I will say, I remember what it was. If they use the 50 days, they will have paid us $69,300, which is the closest we've ever been, if we get that this year. Before, it was $57,000. Moving on, we have lost projected money every year, and the revenue has not covered the overhead and the wear and tear on the building. For that reason alone, I feel we should not enter into another contract. However, there are other reasons to consider. The Cage is a district community center for our students and the community. It is being purchased with tax dollars. It was not purchased to generate revenue, but to provide practice space for our students. I strongly feel it should be available on the weekends for our students and the community. The taxpayer should not be subsidizing private business. The current renters changed from a for-profit business to a non-profit business to avoid the school paying property taxes. I do believe that we could make up the revenue that we would receive on the proposed contract without competing with the renters with basketball leagues and tournaments. We could not do basketball leagues and tournaments, which is okay. But more importantly, it should be available for student, district, and community use. And at this time, I entertain a motion to deny the proposed contract. Have I got support?
I second it.
I support.
But have discussion on the, you still have to
Any
open
comments and
discussion.
questions?
Well, I'll say that,
Go ahead.
look, I'm in support of us agreeing to this contract, so I'm opposed to, Mike's proposal on the table, his motion, for a few reasons. And I've said it before, I think financially as a district that we really are not in a spot right now to walk away or turn down $70,000. I think that our business office has gotten much better about being mindful and responsible about our billing and efficient, that we're gonna do something on a monthly basis where it's even. I think some of the things in this contract help hold both of us accountable, both Cage Sports and this district, referencing the number 3 there, that we're gonna treat them with the same level of respect. They've done something nice for our community by offering to lower the entry fee for our residents. They're giving us 2 months in the summer for us to be able to use it for whatever we want. We have the dates that we need. If we'd like to open it up for our residents, what we have until noon every day, we have pickleball that will still be able to be in there for the community. There are a variety of reasons for us at this time, whether or not whoever owned it before and how that works now, and I've said this part before, we have a whole community ed program where, and people can rent space from any of our buildings, right? They can do that. They can make $1 million in one night or 5 nights or whatever. Really, as long as they rent the space for whatever we agree.
No, it has to be approved on public
that-
stuff. They just, nobody can come in here and just rent a public
I'm
building.
saying though, but technically somebody can rent space. We have it because I looked into it for an organization. You pay a different fee if you're a nonprofit, you pay a different fee if you're an employee, you pay a different fee for whatever different type of organization. There are different fees. Somebody could come in and use that space. Technically, it is not our business how much money they make, if they're making a lot or a little. What is our business is, are we serving our community?
I
And
agree.
being fiscally responsible is part of serving our community. Having that open for the needs, and that, we've talked about this, there were the cheerleaders, there were other teams that were practicing at the high school until 10, 11 o'clock at night. That doesn't happen anymore. They've said that people can come in and play basketball until noon, and we haven't had a request for a need from our coaches or from anybody else in the community that says that they need it during those times or really want to be able to use it during that time. So I guess for that slew of reasons, I'm opposed to that motion.
I'd like to add something, Madam Chair. Underneath that, I agree with Jessica that that's some income coming in. But in reality, that's not $70,000 coming in, because the days that he uses that, we have a cost for the cleanup, trash removal, parking lot maintenance that we're obligated to do on that. So that's not a true number, that $70,000. If you rent my building for $70,000 for 70 days, I have to prepare that building, I have to clean that building, I have to do that. So now our profit's maybe $400 or $500 on a good day, and we could do that before we sign this. Now we're at 30,000, and then you have the wear and tear on the building. I know everybody's shaking their head that that's a no. I own a business, and it costs a lot of money. Paper towel, toilet paper, soap, wear and tear on the parking lot, because now we have to redo the parking lot because it's been tore up by the high traffic. If you go by there, there's several hundred cars in and out of there on a Saturday and Sunday because people are coming in at 4 teams an hour. 50 kids, 50 families. That's a lot of wear and tear on that parking lot that we've never done. We probably lost money on this deal by a significant amount over the last 7 years. I'm just saying that that 70,000 isn't a profit. You're not making that. There's costs associated with that. And there's a lot.
Alicia?
Well, I would say, I definitely am in support of, what Jessica had to say. I oppose getting out of it completely at this time because we don't have an alternative to make up that difference. And where the position is financially of the district, I think we need to take whatever opportunity we can. It's a short-term contract. In that time frame, we can evaluate the community need, we can evaluate the athletic need, and we can evaluate, I think it's just a personal opinion as to whether or not there is need for use when we don't have anything official. This is our time to at least recoup some monies. Regardless, it's our building. We have to upkeep it, we have to maintain it, we have to insure it, we have everything. It's ours, we own it. So we have that responsibility and those expenses regardless. I think to be able to at least recoup a larger amount than we have in the past, a set and identified amount that we know and we can maintain accountability for, as Jessica said. And then again, it gives us the one short calendar year to reassess our needs, the community's needs, and how, if we, at that point, want to get out of the contract, we have an alternative. Because the backlash could be, you get out of it, then it sits empty, and that's even worse for our community.
I want to respond. There are alternatives. I give you a list of them. I don't know where it's at, I can't grab it. There's ways we could recover some of that money. I gave you a whole list of things that we could do that aren't connected to basketball. So I don't think that's an
Wait,
argument.
to that point,
You,
Mike,
go ahead.
to that point though, who are we gonna get to market it? Who are we paying then to answer all those calls and to coordinate it for all we're doing? That's even additional then cost to this district
Sure.
in manpower.
Okay, I'm not even
ahead, sorry.
suggest that we do that to try to recover the money. It would be nice if we did, but you're right, there would be cost to it. And,
A lot of our kids
The-
don't
the-
use it. They don't know that's available. If it was available, maybe more people would use it.
as far as the money and as far as we can afford it, you're right. We can't afford it this budget year. We're hurting. I agree with that 100%. We are talking about a contract on next year's budget. It's a brand new budget, and I'm saying we can afford to lose $57,000 if we lose it all. And I don't think we'd lose it all. As for the use on the weekends, the coaches, yes, they've said they probably wouldn't use it much. Nobody's used to having that cage on the weekends. We don't know how much it would be used. I don't care if it's only used for open gym for the kids in the community to have a place to go. I would be happy to see our kids up there on the weekends. And, if we did that, we'd have to have a person up there. And there would be some cost to it. The 2 months in the summer, I'm not real familiar, but isn't there a period in the
There's
summer where
downtime, right?
you can't have organized?
There's last 2 weeks of July, first week of August.
That plus, this is vacation time, and people are out of town, some people, and July and August are not a big month for a cage. I can see why they're not in there on July and August.
But
That-
if I may, to that point, that might be a real positive for us as a community if we do open it up in the summertime for the kids that aren't on vacation or can't travel. So the summertime, that might be a good fit where we can open it up. Or the other conversation we had, if we really wanna see what kind of community need there is, then let's open up the high school gym and then see if the demand is so great that we need to move it over to the cage.
Let's open up the cage, cause there's 4 courts in there. High school gym's only got 1. We got 4 courts. We're paying big dollars.
But my point is let's see if the demand is there where 4 courts are actually needed.
We can't find out until we do that, and we can't do it with a contract.
Brian, I wanna give you a chance to comment if you'd like, and Tony
Yep.
as well. Sorry, Mike, I just wanna make sure they get a chance to comment.
I agree with Mike, and I agree with Alicia, I agree with Jessica. I think a lot of good points. I had no idea we're not recouping the money that we originally thought we were gonna get, the $8,000 a month for 10 months. I'm surprised that we didn't have, it wasn't oversight of this monies and nobody really checked on it. That really surprises me, but I'm happy that it's been caught, and I'm happy that we've got a contract now to deal with that, and we've got a way of overseeing it. But I do agree that I think it's a short contract for a year, I think give it a year, another year with the oversight. We'll collect the money. I believe that we'll reevaluate in a year from now and then go from there. We may have other uses, other teams, you know, if we start advertising this, marketing this through our coaches and our own sports program, maybe they will talk about developing other things for the Saturdays and Sundays. So I agree that this is, it's a one-year contract, and I would, I know I'm gonna vote positive.
Just I wanna say one more thing to Jessica. Regarding it not being our business, what they make, I agree. It's none of our business what kind of money they make. I agree with that, but I don't agree with what we've only been paid. I don't agree with what we got taken on. I don't agree for the money we didn't get, and that's
I agree with Mike. I know we cannot take the financial hit this year, but that contract is for next fiscal year, which I think when you subtract the cost of operating the building and keeping it open for them, I don't think it's 70, it'd probably be more like 40. And I think that's a hit we could take, and I think the kids could use it. And I'm opposed to even $2 a person for number one. This is the only sporting event that people have to pay for to go see. If your kid plays youth baseball, youth softball, or soccer, nobody pays to go up to the softball fields in the summer or the soccer fields in the summer. If your kid plays softball or baseball, you just go watch them.
So parliamentary procedure issue. So Mike has entered into a motion to deny this.
Yep.
So you actually are gonna need to take 2 votes, I believe. So you're gonna need to take a vote now, and then when we get into board action items.
Yep.
So the vote that's proposed on the motion is to deny the contract.
Right.
So it's in a different, it's in the negative instead of the affirmative. And then that'll be one result, and then you'll consider as a board during discussion items, 10A, okay?
Go for it, yeah.
Or not, depending on
Yeah.
the outcome.
So. Go ahead.
Are you gonna have a roll call vote?
Yes.
Okay,
You beat me to it.
I'm sorry.
Yes. Can, if there are no other comments, everybody said their piece.
Will you just restate the motion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The motion was to, not approve.
A motion to deny the proposed contract.
Have a motion and a second.
So moved.
So, would you
Ready?
do a
Roll call.
roll call, please?
Okay, Chuck Melkey,
Yes. To deny.
Brian Panic,
No.
Mike
Yes.
Curie,
No.
Alicia,
No.
Jessica,
No.
and Tony.
Yes.
So that's 4-3.
So the motion fails.
The
3
motion fails.
yeses and 4 noes.
Okay, so the motion fails, and we'll address it again later.
We'll address it again, yeah.
But thank you, Mike, and others. Appreciate it. Okay, going on, we have, on our agenda, a bond bid package, and I think, Ben, you have, based on the information that you've received, some of the prelude that we've heard from the various folks who've attended some of the meetings, that, you're gonna make a recommendation to us.
Yes, so I will just let you know, you're in receipt of the bids that came sealed bid. These bids are substantially higher than what the cost estimator's maximum estimates could be. So I want to give a little background and explanation of that, and certainly at our Citizens Oversight Committee, we're going to be talking at length about this particular package, and we just scratched the surface in our first meeting. The state of Michigan allows contractors, when they're doing cost estimating on the state application for bonds, to allow for a maximum of $220 a square foot for any addition. The cost estimators put the $220 per square foot, which was the maximum allowable. That is actually the best they could have put in there. It was the highest amount. And in most cases, that's actually plenty sufficient to get the job built. This particular bid package went out at a time where there have been billions of dollars, literally billions of dollars of bonds passed throughout the state of Michigan. There's a saturation in the market, and unfortunately, when interviewed, we only had 1 to 2 bidders per package. When interviewed, the bidders literally were saying, we've got so much work to do, we're throwing a number that's so outrageous that if you're willing to pay us, we'll go ahead and do it. The estimated cost from our steering committee today are around $420 a square foot, which is absolutely astronomical. So there's a couple factors with that. Timing of the bids. Bid packages are going out earlier now. We passed the bond in November. There were already packages from the May bond that were going out. So we actually moved quite quickly. We got this out as quickly as possible. One of the dilemmas that we have is that we had hoped to start building and construction in April. If we approve this package, we could start building in April, but at a significantly higher cost to our bond proposal than we had said. The District Citizens Oversight Committee recommended almost unanimously that we should hold off on this and see what happens in a different package arrangement. When we went to the steering committee today, we spent 2 hours dialoguing about how in the world we could package this and make it more attractive. The recommendation from the team was that if we were to go out for all of the elementary projects in their entirety, so not just the secure entries, but to go for the whole package, we would still do the secure entries first, that we could go out for bid on those in June. We could also follow with the middle school in the early fall, and we'd be able to start construction on those secure entries at our elementary schools by September, which would keep us somewhat on track. We'd still be able to start with safety and security, and they believe that it would draw a much more competitive pricing model and get contractors interested because the projects are bigger. So the recommendation from the steering committee as well as the oversight committee in general is that the board vote no on approving this bid package because of the fact that it's not believed to be prudent by the steering committee to enter into the contracts at such high rates, and that it's more important to stay on track with our budget as close to possible, and to move our start date to September instead of April. One thing that we did discuss is that we are going to still be starting with safety. We have the fire alarm bid package that came in $180,000 below what we thought it was going to come in, so we got great pricing on that. And those packages have started. They're actually doing that work now. And we will also be installing security cameras all throughout the district, and we'll be able to commence on that this summer. So security cameras and technology will have unobstructed ability to be able to move forward in some of those projects. So we will be starting bond work, but the construction itself, if we deny these, which is the recommendation from the steering committee, we would be able to break ground on those secure entries in the September and commence shortly thereafter with the middle school. So I turn it over for discussion or questions. Mike, Tony, and Brian were all at the steering committee. They can, correct or expand on my comments and inform you.
I was very surprised. $853,000 over what the estimate was. You're correct. They mentioned the Treasury Department had a reasonable square foot price of $220 per square foot, and that's what the estimates were through the contractors or through the CM. That's what the estimate was, and this came in double that, over $420 a square foot. And there was few contractors that actually, because so many of them are full of work, they're not hungry for work. They just threw prices out there were double the amount, and if they got it, they were going to get rich on it. I certainly say no. It's not cost effective. We are the stewards of the money here, and I'm totally in disagreement with it. We are starting, like Ben said, we've got cameras and technology and fire alarms that we saved in that bid package, $180,000. But there was really no competition amongst the bidders, so it's double the amount, and the timing was very, very bad. So hopefully if we put the packages together, the bigger packages that would have more incentive to make money, I think, and to listen to the people, you know, the experts at this talk, that's the direction that they were talking about. They're gonna put the packages together in a different way, bigger, and the whole school, like Tony had brought up, do the whole school, bid the whole school out, and then start unwrapping that in September, start shovel ready in September.
When did you say that process would start, so that they would be able to start by September?
They would go out to bid in June, early
Okay.
June.
June 1st, you
Mhm.
said.
So I have two questions. That, first of all, that makes sense, to repackage it. But with that, I have two questions. Will it still be, lucrative when we go out in June? Are they gonna have so much additional work that we're still in the same battle?
So the steering committee felt like it would be much more lucrative because what you've got is you're starting in September. So in June, the estimators that are working on all their summer work are looking at filling their winter work schedules.
Okay.
So if you can start in September, you can get something enclosed, they can build through the winter, and with the additional renovations that would be added to that bid package, they could continue work throughout next summer. So many contractors would have more availability, and then you're gonna get better competition for the bids, as Brian had described.
And my other question is there anything additional that we can look at, that we could bid now to move up, so that we're not off track down the road, or, losing out on what I would consider ample time in the summer when the schools are closed? I mean, my first thought at least would be like parking lots, and where, you know, when you don't have traffic coming into the schools, is that something that we can start looking at over the summer instead?
Yeah, I did ask that question, that's a great question. Their recommendation is that anything you go to bid right now is going to receive similar results in terms of the saturation of the market.
Okay.
So,
Is that from the general contractor
yes.
or from you guys?
Construction manager.
Yeah, the construction.
Mhm.
Did you have a comment?
No, and didn't they say that there's another 1.3 coming up for election in May? That could
Yeah,
hit the-
$1.3 billion of bond work is gonna be on the ballot for the state of Michigan in May.
Which we don't, yeah, so if we delay, then that's gonna be jump ahead, so.
Correct.
There's no guarantee that we're gonna
There's never a
have
guarantee.
a
Correct.
cheaper deal, because other school districts are passing bonds. Some may be richer than us, they may be more lucrative than us. So we're gonna be in competition
Mhm.
with a lot of districts and a lot of other projects.
Yep.
So you got your plate's full with all this stuff.
Absolutely.
With
I
all
don't
this,
mean,
with the three-year timeline.
Absolutely.
I don't mean to put gas on the fire, but it's a fact. They told us that there's a local school district that has already put out bids for 21, 22.
Yeah.
Yeah, that should tell you something, that they are saturated, the contractors.
They're putting off bids for 2 years, is that
Yeah,
what you're
yes,
they're
trying to
looking
say?
at
That's
bidding
what's going
labor
on.
out for 2 years from now.
It's so saturated, they can't.
And
I've
then,
talked to 2 other school districts,
I-
that's where they're at, that's why I said there's no guarantee here, and I wasn't part of the bond, but wasn't there a 3-year promise?
Yeah.
Was it?
It's not just a
Well,
promise,
we
it's a
have-
statutory
we have
requirement.
Yeah, that's where I read it.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so so if we're 100% over on some of these items, we're never gonna make it. If we're 100% over, and we start, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
we felt like we did our due diligence by
Yeah.
packaging and trying to get a better price.
A 4-month delay or right around that time period.
Yeah, but
I mean, it's obviously something we have to keep revisiting with each package, depending
Correct.
on how they come back. But at this time, what you're presenting and what the steering,
The
oversight
steering, the
committee-
steering committee's recommendation would be a no vote
now,
and to not approve the current bid package as presented. Correct.
let's
Any
put it to a
other
motion,
comments?
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
It's-
so,
it's-
so we
I'll-
have that on
yeah,
our board
yeah,
action
yeah.
items, but it's good to have that conversation. And thanks for sharing, and thanks for due
This
diligence.
is the
that's why I wanna
approval.
add on to something else,
Does
you
that
know,
have
off
to
of
be a
this.
rescind of this? Because this is, if we resolve that we are accepting this package, right?
You're going to
We're gonna vote on it.
and if you vote no, that would follow the recommendation.
Can I ask one other follow-up question, and it might just because this stuff is like foreign to me when it comes to building things. There's like, somebody had comments in their bid on some regulations that they're not here it is.
So you're looking at something that Travis is gonna speak on,
Okay,
and that's a, E-rate bid that's coming up at,
Okay.
that would be item number, that would be item C under the
Oh, okay.
action, so, yeah,
Okay.
you're right.
then I'll hold off.
Alright.
Okay.
Okay, strategic planning.
So I don't wanna belabor this or take too much time, but I do wanna pass these out. This is, just a capturing the notes from our meeting last week, our workshop. The front page deals with our vision statement, our values, our mission statement. We have those, that we've expanded those. Oh, sorry about that. Didn't I have it on? Here's some more. So this is a foundation. On the back side, when we talked about our strategic planning process, we start with what are the strategic directions of the district. So the Board of Education at that time identified 4 major strategic directions. Number 1, student support and achievement. Number 2, talent management and support. Number 3, financial and infrastructure management. And number 4, community and cultural engagement and collaboration. So from that, we build out goals and strategic goals within each strategic direction. The first strategic goal that we were able to dialogue and agree on comes under the first strategic direction of student support and achievement, and that is 1A, all students in grades K2 will meet grade level early literacy standards in reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So underneath there, you'll see the notes, which are just very rough draft statements that have been discussed at the meeting. My goal here then is to try and take some of these and put them into sample goal statements for you. If you have suggestions on those or how to cultivate those into an appropriate specific goal statement, feel free to pass that on. And then over the course of the next couple board meetings, I'd like to be able to solidify some of these and really get a graphic together that identifies those strategic goals. So what you're seeing in my notes, those are very rough. Those are just my notes from the conversation that we had. But what I'd like to be able to do is turn those into strategic goals as we have in 1A there, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments about that or the process?
Very general statement. Even in the goals, a timeline, some kind of.
Yep, so when you get to the goals, the next layer down is gonna be the strategic objectives and initiatives. So then we're going to start laying out, okay, over the next 3 years, we're looking at a 3-year plan. What can we accomplish within what the board is establishing as those goals? And so we'll definitely get into a little bit more detail as it pertains to timelines. And then it's gonna be imperative to hold accountability to those goals, you know, over the course of that 3 years. Any other questions?
Thanks for doing this, putting
Yeah,
it together
sure.
for us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is much more more well articulated than what we were doing.
I
Under
still don't-
3,
as a group.
A,
Yes.
or wait, not A, B. Listen up. We did this last year, the finance committee, as I remember, and Travis has a inventory asset management system in effect, right?
We just have to.
And it's a Class A program.
Mm-hmm.
We're just keeping
True.
all this.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're going to wanna make sure if we include that in that strategic direction, that if that's really one of the goals we have, how do we enhance or maintain or keep, you know, if that's really where we wanna go. And it's possible that that might not make the cut for one of the strategic goals, but
Okay.
just so you know. Yeah,
Okay,
that's it.
thank you, thanks.
Mhm.
So send your comments to Ben.
Yep.
All right. going on, we have board action items. The first is the approval of the rental agreement with Cage Sports Club. I
As
need a motion,
presented.
as presented, I need a motion.
So moved.
Support.
Jessica and Brian. Any comments or questions?
We need a
Okay,
roll
yeah,
call
let's
vote.
do that. Hearing none, let's do a roll call, please, Joanne.
All right, Chuck Melkey?
Can you read the,
Oh, sure, I can
Motion
read
to-
the motion. Let me get my glasses on.
so,
Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approve the rental agreement with Cage Sports Club as presented.
okay, thank you.
Chuck?
No?
Brian?
Yes.
Mike?
No.
Carrie?
Yes.
Alicia?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
And Tony?
No.
That's 3 no's and 4 yeses. I mean, excuse me, 3 yeses and 4 no's.
No, that's,
No.
No, no.
Count again.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Oh, it's got another no.
1, 2, 3, I'm sorry.
Nice
It's
try.
absolute-
I have Brian.
I'm sorry, I have
Carrie, Alicia,
4
and-
yeses and 3 no's. Sorry.
So the motion passes to continue our contract or renew the contract with the terms that we were presented.
correct.
Okay, the next on the agenda, as we just discussed, is the bond bid package, and this motion is to approve that bid package. This was placed on the agenda prior to the conversations that have gone on. So, I guess I need a motion.
So moved.
Support.
Motion for what? To
I
deny
need a
or
motion
approve?
to,
Yeah,
if you'd
was
like
it
to
said?
state your motion
Yeah,
as to either to approve or deny it.
Deny. State to
You
deny.
can make a,
Deny.
you
Yeah, we
can make a motion
motion to deny.
Yeah.
to deny.
Is that what you're?
that's all I was asking for
Yes, yes,
clarification,
make
was
a-
a
yes.
motion
So
made,
who's-
there's
who
no
made the motion?
deny or approve.
Mike, you
Pardon?
made the motion,
Yes,
and so yours is to deny,
yes.
correct? And Tony, you're supporting
Yes.
that? Okay. All right, so we have on the table a motion to deny the bond bid package number 2, which would change our motion to be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education deny the bond bid package number 2, elementary secure entries as presented. Any comments or questions?
I do have one comment on that.
Sure.
I think if we're gonna be getting all these proposals, which I have a feeling there's gonna be a significant amount, and I may have missed it, do we have them assign numbers, Ben? Let's start assigning those numbers so we can refer back to them. Is that okay with the board? So we have numbers? to
Sure, I
them?
just need to know, like, what are
You,
you?
you come up with a numbering system, so we got something we can follow with, cause I
This is
think,
bid number 2.
Yeah, this is bid number 2.
is that what it is called?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
bid
because the
number
fire
2?
alarm was number 1.
Okay, that's fine, as long as that's on there.
I see what you're saying, yes.
No, just, you know, if you wanna call it 2019-02, so, cause this is gonna be going on, I
Mhm.
think for a lengthy time, and I don't wanna get monkeyed up where we get a bid and then we find out, we get a bid a year from now, it's a $500 more and we should've went with something. I wanna have some way of tracking it.
Sure.
So
Yep.
just to clarify, that means that when you bring one back in June or July, that
It-
it would have a separate numbering system.
Yeah, so it would be depending, and there's gonna be multiple packages in June, so
That's
you're
what I'm
gonna
asking
have,
for, yeah,
you're gonna have a 4, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6,
Okay.
and then we'll have inventory on which is which, so.
that way the board can easily keep track of it by going back to bid and saying,
Sure.
hey, I thought we paid this much for it or that much for it. And the public can oversee it too by saying where we're spending their money at
Sure.
and what we're doing with it. That's all I'm asking. Other than
Great.
that, that's it, okay.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. I think we have,
Should we do a roll call vote on that, cause it's money?
You don't
we
have
don't
to.
have
Okay,
to.
alright.
The E-rate contract?
Yeah, so I'm gonna ask Travis to come up. You have a wireless access points package in front of you. This one is much better news than what we had on the bond side, so I'll let Travis explain what this is.
Yeah.
And any E-Ray project is a good project, so we're in our 5th year of E-Ray, so people that don't know, E-Ray historically was
developed to offset the phone system costs for districts. 5 years ago, the government decided that they needed to increase broadband in school districts, so they developed a category 2, which allows us to buy networking hardware like switches, access points, the stuff that basically is the network framework for the district. Over the last 4 years, we've used the money to upgrade the network switches. It's been great for the district. We've upgraded most of the network backbone with brand new Cisco switches. This year, what we wanted to do was replace the wireless access point system, or Wi-Fi system. We went out to bid, and we put out the bids in the beginning of January. It goes to the E-rate portal. We got quite a few replies. We got 7 replies back. We actually disqualified a few. They didn't meet the bid specs because we were asking for the latest, greatest technology. We asked for AX Spectrum, which is brand new on the industry. So we had 5 vendors that were qualified, and we were going with the lowest bid through C-High for an Aruba wireless system AX. I was very pleased with the pricing on this, and even the vendors seemed pretty surprised that HP allowed them to give us this low cost of price. So I was very happy with it. What we're asking you today is to approve to enter into a contract with C-High, which is allow us to purchase the devices at this price. We don't have to purchase all the devices. It's my recommendation that we would. And the great thing about E-rate is it's based on the free to reduced rate of our school district. So in this case, we would be paying roughly 45% of the total cost. So the government E-rate program will subsidize the other part of that. Make sense?
So what you see before you, if you look at the switch point bid comparison, Gray Bar vendor, the vendor for Gray Bar, their bid was $226,000, and they bid the exact same model that say he bid out for less than half the price. And because it's an E-rate project, we're only gonna pay 45% of that cost. So we're gonna be able to upgrade and get the latest technology and switches at, you know, a $47,000 price point, which is absolutely unheard of. So,
Why were they so much cheaper?
They're a gold partner, so a lot of manufacturers,
What's that mean?
they're like a gold partner. So like the one with Presidio, that was really good pricing. So Presidio and C-High are the major distributors of those manufacturers. Presidio has Cisco, C-High has an HP partner. HP owns Aruba, so that allows them to get deeper discounts than like Gray
Okay.
Bar.
I just wondered why it was so much cheaper, and we have that in our budget allocated, that money's earmarked.
yeah,
that amount of
so in
money.
our technology budget, usually every year, so we get a refund. So the way E-rate works is over each year you spend, let's just round numbers, say it's
Yeah.
100,000. You spend the 100,000, the next year you get 60,000 reimbursed because of what you spent and because of what Travis was describing.
Right.
So the money has to be there, you get it refunded, sometimes in the same fiscal year, but,
Good.
yeah, we'll end up getting a subsidy for, you know, probably over 50% of the bill.
So this doesn't change our E-rate contract, it changes who's providing the services and the hardware,
We have an E-rate consultant that we pay.
right?
They help tabulate and formulate and put the bid on the portal and everything, but every year we go out with a new contract. This is the first time that we've done the wireless system. In the past,
Okay.
it's just been network switches.
So why the $351 to the access point for C-High and $1,345 for Presidio? Is there a reason? You said they're very similar.
2 different, one's Cisco, one is
So
the
it's just at the
Aruba,
source?
different manufacturer, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Any other comments?
So in the notes part, what's USAC?
USAC, it's the Universal Service something accounts. It's the like governing body for E-rate.
Okay,
So they call it the USAC portal, basically is what that is.
so the comments that are made about, like, if something's not eligible and then we're responsible for that difference, is that pretty much across the board for any of these companies?
Yeah,
Or is it just, okay,
everything. There's some things that you can go out for that they weren't sure if would be E-rate eligible. So like licensing, in the last couple of years, they've had some opinions from lawyers about that, and they have allowed that. So I think they are basically saying, we'll bid it out, and then if it doesn't, it doesn't. So the main thing I'm worried about is the access points, really.
And then just a comment that I'm glad you understand all this stuff and that's why you have you in your position.
Yay.
So I've been
Make
very,
that publicly known.
I've been very happy with the E-rate program. I hope they continue it. It's no guarantee for next year, but if they do continue, then we'll go on to our next 5-year cohort.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Then I need a motion to approve the E-rate contract as Travis has presented it.
So moved.
Support.
Alicia, Jessica, any comments or questions? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks, Travis.
Thank
you.
All right, finally, we have the approval of the school safety liaison and emergency contact.
So this is in your packet today. Essentially what this is it's a resolution. The state law that has, Public Act 435, it's a brand new law. It snuck up on us. It just got passed through and there's implications that this has to be done by the end of the month. So what this essentially says is that the school district will require the superintendent to designate a safety liaison and an emergency contact to the Attorney General hotline. You know, we will use Jeremy Pizzala and Kevin Claren in these capacities. But we have to take official board action to approve the resolution, which would allow for me to go in and designate that person. The law specifies that there has to be board action, so that's why that's before you today.
Okay.
I just have a question. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
My first thought reading that was Pizzala, but it does state that it has to be a district employee. Is he technically a district employee?
No, he's not, but
Okay.
Kevin Claren is.
Okay.
So, yep, Kevin would be our direct contact with that hotline.
Gotcha.
Okay. So with that, I need a motion to approve the signed folks.
So moved. Support.
Mike and Tony, any comments or questions? Has everybody had a chance to read the resolution that was here on the second page?
We'll just do as presented.
So, motion is to approve the designation of school safety liaison and emergency contact to the Attorney General, Jeremy Pizzala and Kevin Claren. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now we're down to public comments, and anyone would like to address the board, please stand and state your name. And keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, please.
Should I walk up here?
Sure. We'd love to have you.
Okay. My name's Marty Samlin. I like what I heard here tonight. You guys keeping each other in check and balances. The cage thing, I know, has always been a concern to the people in the community. We didn't quite understand it. And I think going with your year and seeing what the cost and, what the revenue is from it, it's a good thing to have the revenue coming in. There's a lot of places in Flint that probably would like the revenue. School district, $1,000 a day. Was it $8,000 to $1,000 a day for the use? That's pretty good money. The other thing was the people's money on these contracts. I don't know how you guys put your bids out there. There's a lot of companies around, local. Hall Construction that built the Muddy Township Hall. I went to school with the guy's family. They did good work over there. Perrin out in Duran. There's a lot of places. I don't know how they find out about school work, but I'm sure they would love to do work in their community. And even if I understood correctly, you guys said you possibly could lose the bond money if you didn't use it within a certain amount of time. Is that correct? I'm pretty sure the voters, you guys being so spending their money wisely, would vote to do another millage. They want the most for their money. I know that there's a lot of retirees in our community. My dad's one of them, and he doesn't mind paying as long as we have nice schools in the area and stuff like that. And their money's well spent. Everybody wants nice stuff, they just want their money well spent. And another thing I'd like to say, my kids have been in the district, I think 10 years. I got another 10 to go. And Mr. Heatherton, was my kid's first principal. And I came from the Flint School District, which was a big district. came out here to Morrish Elementary, and it was like going in the country. Everybody knew each other, parents get to know each other, you feel like you belong, and Swartz Creek has an awesome school environment, and you guys are doing a fine job. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you so
Salem.
much.
Appreciate it very much. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. All right, now we have time for comments and questions from the board. Anybody?
I have one, and I haven't got the phone call or saw the email, but the elementary school projects, you know, the discussion you guys have had prior to me coming on board and since I've been on board about consolidating schools. It kind of leads to what I was saying before. It's not a motion, but I just think we shouldn't look into it right now. Ben has a lot on his plate. He is going to be working full-time to try to get these proposals in, the bond, you know, working right, and all this money, and I know that the intentions are good for the elementary school, at least having the open and honest discussion about it, which I'm for it, but I think that, and I know there was something on the news about it last night. I got some calls again last night about it, and from my understanding is we're just gonna leave it alone, which I'm for that, because I was originally against it, and I still am, but I'm for just leaving it alone right now, because I think we have a lot of oars in the water, and we're doing a lot of things, and that's just something we don't need to address right now, which I think that's kind of been a consensus now from what I've heard from some of the board members, because I think Ben's made some calls. I haven't got that call yet, but I hope that's with the direction we're heading in.
And I hope you get a chance to read what Ben said. It was very thoughtful.
Yep.
And I don't think it says we're not going to look at it. It says we're going to continue to look at data, the research, finding ways to do the best that we possibly can for our children.
Right.
And that, you know, we'll continue to look at this.
But the community, I've gotten 30 or 40 emails, and it's all been negative. Not to say that they're right or wrong, but it's not been for it. And I'm still against it until there's more data presented. But we were spending some time on it, and we have a lot of oars in the water that need to be addressed. And I just think we need to leave that alone and move on to other things. That's my board comment.
I was just gonna agree that I think we're not in a position to make a decision, but it is something that will still be evaluated with time.
Anybody?
I have something, I don't know whether or not to say this publicly or privately, so I'm gonna say it publicly, and that is, I want you to know, Mike, that because you and I were the two main voices talking with regards to the cage, there is nothing personal about it. I respect you and I admire
Well, I'm
you.
glad to hear that.
And I appreciate and I hope as the board and even as we talk about with the upper and the lower elementary or whatever may or may not happen with that we have conversation. I understand your points and I don't necessarily fully disagree with them. It's just a matter of of different priorities at the time. But to be able to respectfully have that disagreement and to be able to talk about it, I think it is crucial. And I appreciate that. I looked up, I didn't see any glaring eyes across the table, which I was thankful for, and I just want you to know that I very much appreciate that and heard what you said.
Okay,
That's all I want to say.
I appreciate that,
Yeah.
and I know we all feel, everybody's got different positions, and we need to hear them, you know, without going off the deep end. And I wanna have my say like you do, and once a vote is made, then we're gonna support it and live with it.
Okay, I have another comment. I'm gonna be the voice from the band parents and the band community. We are all leaving in 7 more work days, not that I'm counting, to go to Walt Disney World and Universal Studios to represent Swartz Creek, and they are performing. But we would like to extend our thanks to the board for the support of participating in that trip.
Alicia, you are going,
I
right?
am going.
So
She's not chaperone.
A little bit.
I was just kidding.
Oh no, I am. And there's 87 high school students on 2
Be
buses.
a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Do you have all your pins, your Disney pins ready to go?
Oh, I got all kinds
Okay.
of stuff. I don't pin trade, but
Okay.
Hopefully you can take some video and share with us.
we actually part of our agreement with our travel agency, they actually put together, they upload pictures from all the kids and then do a video. The kids are actually also composing and playing instrumental music to animation, so that's part of their actual educational experience. We, even as parents and chaperones, aren't even allowed to go back there, so it's a very unique experience that they get to have.
Nice. Cool, well, thank you for sharing that.
If I
Have
can
fun.
share, I believe we get a CD of that, so if I can, I'll bring that back and let the
Cool.
board listen to it.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to say, appreciate what went on tonight with the discussion. This thing's the first time since I've been on the board in 2.5 years, it was a 3-4 split with discussion, and it was a good discussion. And that, I think that shows how far we've come along.
And I
That we
think
can
we'll
have
have
a-
many more of those with our bids coming up and decisions that have to be made, so I agree with you, Tony, and thank you, Mike, and
I think it's healthy.
it's
Yeah,
really,
that's
it is, it helps to talk it through.
I think this
Okay.
is a very good meeting tonight.
Alright,
I don't
I'd like-
feel good.
I'd like to give Mike an attaboy. I mean, he did a lot of research. He did a lot of digging, a lot of research, and he also got the gold star for starting the work. And I'm gonna start it tonight when I get home, okay, Mike?
So before we leave, I wanna, congratulate, I think, Mr. Sheep, Mr. Love, and Mr. Semantic, we talked about them earlier. Good luck to the band, wonderful opportunity for them, my daughter did that in high school, it was amazing. And so with that, no other comments, we are adjourned.